My Little Sister Can't Possibly Be This Cute is an anime which gets constantly memed on due to its, shall we say, attention-grabbing title. It's a show which is infamous in some circles, and yet at this point 16 years past its release, in fact 18 years after its original light novel was first published, I can't confidently determine how many people have actually seen it. With a title like that, it immediately positions itself as a filter, selecting only for the kind of audience who would take up its challenge, because the title is a sort of question, put to the prospective audience. How is it possible for one's little sister to be this cute? Aside from its existential implications, it also contains a certain braggadociousness, an implicit assumption that you, the audience member, will find contained within an unbelievably cute little sister. Perhaps one can imagine a grizzled and wizened otaku hearing this title, this proclamation of a particularly cute little sister, and thinking to themselves, "Oh really?" in a tone dripping with suspicion, familiar as they would be with a vast multitude of legendarily cute immortal characters preceding this point. And therein lies the challenge implicit in Oreimo's title, a declaration: you won't find a little sister cuter than this. The skeptical otaku will naturally give in to curiosity in the face of this challenge and, already assuming they know better than the show, will begin to watch the first episode with a hopeful wariness. After all, if the show's title is already so confident, perhaps this otaku can, under a layer of circumspection, pray they have stumbled upon something potentially legendary. On the other hand, we can imagine a non-otaku. In fact, we don't need to imagine this particular individual because we are surrounded by them. They are quite possibly already in the comment section of this very video. Well, we can picture them reeling at the title, at the open declaration of what will inevitably be perceived as transgressive otaku sexuality. Already this person is imagining what kinds of sick depravity could possibly be found within such a work. It's not unreasonable to assume this individual is already filing their newfound knowledge of the show away with the collection of half-remembered, vaguely understood facts which represent the notion that Japan is weird. They do things different over there. Oh, Japan? That's the place where they do tentacle hentai, eyeball-licking adult videos, and they made a cartoon called My Little Sister Can't Possibly Be This Cute. The Japanese title is Ore no imoto ga konna ni kawaii wake ga nai, or Oreimo for short, which is what I will refer to it as for the remainder of this video. The thing is, when you look inside Oreimo, what you find is actually neither lazy otaku bait with a stereotypical immortal character at the center, nor do you find anything notably sexually depraved. Well, put an asterisk on that for the moment. Instead, the title is playing on a much more abstract level, intersecting with the text, the metatext, and the context simultaneously. On the one hand, yes, the show does literally center around a little sister, Kirino, but she is intentionally distinct from what an otaku audience would have recognized as typical of a cute little sister character. In fact, a primary aspect of Kirino's characterization is as follows. To the outside world, she embodies a sort of popular girl archetype. She does some modeling work on the side. She has plenty of good friends in her age group at school. She is studious and personable for the most part towards everyone besides her brother. However, unbeknownst to the outside world, Kirino is secretly a hardcore otaku who spends the money she earns from modeling on 18+ visual novels and collects lewd merch of bishoujo characters. Not only that, but she is also extremely demanding, somewhat entitled, short-tempered, and narcissistic. In other words, the title is a declaration of fact. From the outside, my little sister looks cute, but if you knew her like I, her brother, knew her, then you would find out that she is in fact not as cute and innocent as she appears. My little sister can't possibly be seen as this cute from outside because I know she isn't. This is the meaning of the title, which is overtly endorsed by the anime in its opening sequence, which shows the main character Kyosuke being awoken softly in the morning by his kind and cute little sister, a kind of stock immortal type scene which, even by 2008, was already a source of parody, such as in the opening moments of the visual novel Da Capo from 2002. Upon being greeted in such a polite and caring manner in the morning, Kyosuke immediately declares that this can't be real, since his sister would never do something this nice for him, and therefore he shouts, "Say the line, Bart!" before waking up from what was a dream sequence. and so that is the surface level diegetic meaning of the title. But it doesn't end there. Within the anime, those 18 plus visual novels which Kirino is particularly interested in belong to the genre of imotoge, little sister games. Visual novel games which feature prominently immortal-type heroine characters to romance, who one might expect to neatly fit in with the database characteristics of an immortal. Over the course of the show, Kirino forces her older brother Kyosuke to play some of these games to understand the appeal of immortal characters. Perhaps Kyosuke, after experiencing a Moe Bishoujo Immortal Kyara for the first time, after only ever associating the concept of little sisters with his real-life annoying sibling, well, perhaps he would exclaim, "Little sisters can't possibly be this cute," upon witnessing the gap with reality. Or maybe, taking it even further, he might come out from playing those games to interacting once again with Kirino and think to himself, "My little sister can't possibly be this cute," with the meaning, I can't comprehend Kirino belonging to the same category of thing as these cute little sisters. But doesn't the title also imply a kind of discovery? As in, I've always had a little sister who I've known one non-cute side of, but now I am discovering this annoying little sister actually has this cute side to her after all. And this certainly mirrors what happens within the plot of the show. As Kirino gradually learns to become more open about her hobby, to gain friends with similar interests, in a purely wholesome way, one could easily declare that seeing someone they know having fun indulging in their passions fully, well, I could call that cute. Certainly this is an experience I've had, feeling that a particular person info-dumping enthusiastically about their special interest is kind of adorable. So somehow the title works both ways temporally. In one way, the version of herself which Kirino presents to the outside world is the cute version, which doesn't match her reality as a degenerate otaku. But conversely, the authentic passion of the degenerate otaku side could itself be the cute thing. And we're still not done, because now we can pull back to see the title within the broader context of otaku culture. As previously alluded to, the immortal character is a well-established database archetype within the otaku subculture, and so the title functions effectively as a bait-and-switch, drawing in an otaku audience familiar with and attached to immortal characters who expect to have their wish fulfilled by a particularly cute little sister, filtering out non-otaku. But instead of showing them what they want, Orayemo has rather filtered for a group of people who will already have a familiarity with its cultural context. In other words, it's a show about a hardcore moe otaku, which has disguised itself as a show for hardcore moe otaku in order to draw in a crowd who can relate to and understand that character and their community. Take the character Kuroneko, one of Kirino's otaku friends, who comes to play a very important role as the show goes on. She's interested in gothic lolita fashion, and her tastes in otaku media fit a kind of chunibyo archetype. She likes to read epic, dark, melodramatic light novels, containing lots of complicated kanji. I, as a non-Japanese native, am only aware of the trope that those kinds of light novels are associated with complex kanji because I've watched this show, and to be honest, having not read any of this genre myself, especially not in Japanese, I'm probably missing context here. But because Orayemo has marketed itself with that title to otaku, it can presume a level of pre-existing familiarity with cultural tropes like that, an idea that its audience might think, oh, she's that kind of person, with a knowing grin, like they've met someone like this in real life. The anime is packed full of references to semi-obscure otaku media, which only an in-the-know audience member would be able to catch. In episode 1, when Kyosuke first discovers Kirino's secret of being an otaku, she shows him her closet where she stores all her hobby-related goods, and this moment is just full of Easter eggs. Despite the titles being changed for copyright purposes, an astute viewer will be able to recognize accurately depictive DVDs of Kiss X Sis, DVDs of the Sister Princess anime, the Sister Princess visual novel, DVDs of the Dakapo anime, CDs of the Dakapo soundtrack, Dakapo The Origin, Dakapo Plus Station for PS2, Dakapo 2 for PS2, presumably the DX release with the additional Harukaze PS Plus situation bonus arc and the anime DVDs with interviews in the soundtrack, A box simply labeled Oni-chan CD, presumably a drama CD, a Yorakemai Yori Duriyirona drama CD, some other drama CDs I can't identify because I'm really bad at reading stylized Japanese text, then hilariously, Mother 2 renamed to Immortal 2, Final Fantasy VI renamed to Final Sister 6, Live Alive renamed to Sister Sist, Final Approach 1 and 2, a box labeled Strawberry Confusion, which I'm guessing is supposed to be the Strawberry Panic visual novel for PS2, and Amagami for PS2. Then there's the moment in the sequence where Kirino stacks up all of her eroge into a giant tower. The first few boxes you see all seem to be invented for the show, but as the pile grows, they start showing real eroge, where sometimes they didn't even change the name or the box art. We can see School Days, Cross Days, and Summer Days, Flyable Heart, Sugar Plus Spice 2, Kisu to Mao to Dajiring, Choo Choo Idoru 2 Melodies X Memories. You can see Akane Iro ni Somaru Saka, Sakura Sakura, Shumatsu Shoujo Genso Arisumatiku, Meguri Meguraba Meguru Toki. And then there's this bizarre case where after a lot of searching I figured out that this has to be Amatsu Misora ni, developed by Clochette, but the background has been changed from red to blue, and the skirts on the uniforms have changed color also. At first I thought it was a mistake where they had accidentally used the cover for the PSP release, but no, because that cover features this green-haired girl, so it's just a strange alternative universe version of the game. And then they changed the name of Dakapo 2 in this scene, so it's CD11, even though they showed DC earlier. What's going on there? Why change the name of that game but keep the others the same? I mean, there actually is a Dakapo fan disc, which is called CD something something, where CD stands for Christmas Day because it's set on Christmas, but that is not, the style, the box art looks completely different, basically. Then there's Natsuzora Kanata, except the girl's hair color has been changed from black to red. I want to point out that as far as I can tell, I am the first person on the Western internet to actually take the time to identify all of these games. Somehow no one has done this before, that I can find at least. So I've created a list on Kaguya in case you want that. It's linked in the description. Obviously, these are Easter eggs designed to be paused on and examined by those who bought would it have been DVDs or Blu-rays by the time this came out, I'm not sure. And I can't identify all of the intended parodies, but that's not the point. Of course, someone could probably flex their knowledge in the comments by naming every parody I've missed, but the point is more like a broad wink at the camera, or perhaps, if I may say more boldly, a subtle dissolving of the distinction between fan and creator, audience and artist, by virtue of the acknowledgement that we're all in the same subculture here. But the most important part of the scene happens slightly later, when Kyosuke asks Kirino why she's so interested in this stuff to begin with. Kirino simply responds with, "I don't know, I can't help it." This statement is what ultimately proves Kirino to be a true otaku. I'm reminded of something I once heard Zizek say. If you ask someone why they love their partner, they can start explaining things like, "I love their eyes, I love their smile, I love the way they're so kind," and so on. But no matter how long you spend naming things, you can never fully explain why. In fact, if someone could actually name every reason why they loved someone, that would not be true love. True love has this indescribable unconscious component which can never be put into language. Having an attachment to shoujo characters in this way fits the same pattern. It is itself a kind of love, a different kind of love, but a kind of love nonetheless. And likewise, it shares that inarticulable core. Hilariously, and something I had somehow missed until now, Kirino goes on to name drop Kazu SP and Akiba blog, two of the biggest otaku culture blogs / news aggregator websites, which were at the time especially important in the community. In fact, Akiba blog has been featured on this channel before in my video on Yorakemai Yoriduri Irona as the source of a particular meme. These days, that kind of independent, centralized fandom space has been overtaken for the most part by Twitter and some other social networks. In my opinion, for the worst, but that's another topic. So the name of the work stands as a kind of filter, attracting only a certain kind of person. But in fact, I believe that this text can be said to have an even more precise audience in mind. That is to say, by virtue of it being a commentary on otaku culture, referencing works like Sister Princess rather than embodying a work like Sister Princess, it also serves to, in some sense, distance itself from the authentic expression of otaku passions. In depicting rather than indulging those passions, Oreimo positions itself as a sort of beginner's guide. After all, our audience surrogate protagonist is not Kirino herself, but her non-otaku brother Kyosuke. In this way, Oreimo plays to a sort of self-aware otaku. And who are these self-aware otaku? They are new otaku for whom the existence of a work with a title as bold as this is even notable or surprising in the first place. Just as a random example, in 2007 a visual novel was released by the studio Nonai Kanojo titled Zettai Imoto Shijoshugi, which means something like absolute little sister supremacy. I have no idea if that game sold well or anything, but the point is that sort of thing would be entirely ordinary to someone immersed in the culture at that time. The very fact that Kirino can collect anime like Sister Princess and Kiss X Sis points to the fact that these works necessarily have to have already existed and been a phenomenon recognizable enough to function as a reference. Oreimo is an advert for otaku culture, a friendly look inside the subculture which tells prospective members what to expect, even while simultaneously constructing a simulation of that subculture which by necessity does not correspond to any particular real. Actually, I feel like I need to hammer that last point home a little more clearly. At a certain point, you know what, I'm going to arbitrarily decide that it was with the release of the visual novel Comic Party by developer Leaf in the year 1999. Otaku culture revealed itself to be hyperreal. Well, self-referentially otaku works have existed prior to that, notably Otaku no Video, but trying to discover a 0 point where something officially switched from being real to hyperreal is always impossible, so we just have to pick something arbitrary with the knowledge that this is always a half-truth. Notice that I said otaku culture revealed itself to be hyperreal. For such a work to have been produced, otaku culture already has to have been hyperreal first, and secondly, we can't know if it was always hyperreal or if it became hyperreal at some point. Comic Party is a visual novel in the same sort of genre as Oreimo or Lucky Star or Genshiken or whatever, fictional stories about otaku culture which appear to reference some real of otaku culture which exists just elsewhere. And yet, with the proliferation of these simulations, it becomes impossible to engage with otaku culture without that engagement itself being a simulation of what you have seen in Comic Party or Lucky Star or Genshiken or whatever. Thus, every part of the system is characterized as a simulation of a simulation, a simulacra. And yet all of these simulacra appear to be representations of something real, something just over there, a non-simulated reality. That illusory, non-simulated reality, which always appears to be just out of reach, just off screen, is called hyperreality. Often, when barely literate YouTube video essayists attempt to bring up Baudrillard, they ascribe to his theories a normativity which was never actually there in the text. In fact, Baudrillard is perhaps nihilistic, but not particularly offended by hyperreality. Hyperreality is not straightforwardly a good or bad thing, nor is it obviously a new thing. To put it simply, there's no reason to be disappointed by the fact that otaku culture is hyperreal. Practically everything is hyperreal. If you want to be miserable about this death of the reality principle, I will respond with a quote from the man himself. "Too bad. We're in paradise." I still suspect I will receive comments from those desperate to retain the reality principle, neurotically offended that I would even propose that otaku culture could somehow be simulacral, even in spite of otaku's tendency towards and passion for the unreal 2D world. You should in fact be glad. Now the 3D world is officially just a poor imitation of the 2D, which is exactly what we always knew it was. In this manner, Oreimo makes transparent the truth of otaku culture. In that first episode, Kyosuke understandably asks the obvious question. If his little sister is so obsessed with playing games featuring little sisters who fall in love with their older brothers, does that imply something about her feelings towards him? She reacts with disgust, immediately calls him gross, and proclaims matter-of-factly that you shouldn't confuse 2D and 3D, that of course no sister would love her brother in real life. And yet, if we skip to the final episode of the show, whoa, would you look at that, who could have seen this coming? Now, most people, including myself, dislike the direction the show went after season 1, and there's plenty of criticism from a storytelling perspective about this ending, but it certainly does make for a pertinent point. Oreimo itself is internally confusing 2D and 3D. They are becoming confluent, undifferentiated. And of course Kyosuke and Kirino were going to end up together. From the moment this tension was introduced in episode 1, we already knew the teleological necessity of its resolution via the breakdown in the distinction between reality and its representation. Or more accurately, rather than a total breakdown, the reversibility of that distinction, that the signifier can soon come to dominate its signified, that 2D can gain primacy over 3D. In the same manner, Oreimo's representation of otaku culture would inevitably come to gain primacy and in turn construct that very otaku culture in its image. So when Kirino opens up her closet to reveal shelves lined with visual novels, anime DVDs, and figures of a character from a Mahou Shoujo anime, she doesn't just reveal what's in her closet, she also constructs the sort of thing which one would expect to find in the room of an otaku. And so, when it is declared that my little sister can't possibly be this cute, we already can hear a pre-supplied response. Yes, she can be, because she is, and I can see it right there. Now, it's worth noting that Oreimo, inspired by the visual novels which so fascinate its central character, is a narrative with multiple endings. Spanning 2019 to 2021, the series' author Tsukasa Fushimi released a series of 3 alternate ending light novels entitled Ayase If, Kuroneko If, and Kaneko If. Each of these spin-off light novel entries depicts a different world wherein our protagonist did not in fact end up with Kirino, but instead with Ayase, Kuroneko, or Kaneko respectively. So, me and my fellow Kuroneko fans can enjoy objectively best girl actually winning. I only mention this because I've never seen it brought up. Oreimo is always the show where the guy fucks his sister, the show which had a solid romance between Kyosuke and Kuroneko in the first season only to throw it away for the Kirino route in season 2. Well, the Kuroneko route does in fact exist. Not only does it exist, but it is the only of the 3 If series to have a manga adaptation, and that adaptation has been translated into English, so you can in fact read the good version of the ending. It exists. I just thought I would offer this fact as a public service announcement because I suspect there are many others like me who are Kuroneko fans. Oreimo, in large part because of its title, is widely the butt of the joke when it comes to anime weird discussions by non- and low-tier otaku. But it was Tsukasa Fushimi's follow-up work, Eromanga Sensei, which served a similar purpose in the field of people who have seen a few animes. If you're not at all familiar with the Japanese language, the title Eromanga Sensei is not anywhere near as in-your-face brash as Ore no Imoto ga konna ni kawaii wake ga nai. If you had only watched season 1 of Oreimo, or dismissed season 2 as basically not required watching, you could accurately say it's a show with a wacky title which is actually just a fairly straightforwardly decent anime most people could stomach fine enough. Eromanga Sensei, on the other hand, is not like this. It does not pull punches. As previously mentioned, Oreimo's first light novel volume released in 2008. The anime followed in 2010. The first volume of Eromanga Sensei released in 2013, and its anime adaptation came out in 2017. In 2024, Hiro Kanzaki, the artist who created the original illustrations for Oreimo and Eromanga Sensei, tweeted the following.
Oreimo came out at a delicate time when values were changing, so the idea of a heroine who hides her otaku hobbies and pretends to be a popular girl worked, but I don't think it would resonate as much with people in today's society.
Over the course of these 18 years, the general attitude towards otaku has softened significantly, at least broadly speaking. Personally, I would phrase this slightly differently. The attitude towards being an anime fan has softened dramatically. The appropriation of otaku culture and aesthetics has become mainstream. However, the distinction between anime fan and otaku has deepened, and the latter still face social marginalization. Eromanga Sensei takes place later in that timeline, and in fact even addresses this point very directly. In episode 2, Sagari's classmate... Wait, I haven't even told you who Sagari is yet. You don't even know what the show is about. Okay, to summarize quickly, our protagonist, Masamune, lives at home with his non-blood related little sister, Sagari. Sagari is a hikikomori, a shut-in who refuses to leave her room. Masamune is an aspiring light novel author who works online with a highly esteemed illustrator who goes by the pen name Eromanga Sensei. Well, it turns out the true identity of Eromanga Sensei was his sister Sagari the whole time? Wacky hijinks ensue. Okay, so in episode 2, Sagari's classmate, or ex-classmate, Megumi, comes over to their house to try and convince Sagari to stop being a hikikomori and come back to school. Upon entering the house, she sees a calendar on the wall with an anime-style illustration and asks Masamune if he's an otaku. He sheepishly accepts the label, at which point Megumi proclaims that she's an otaku too. His face lighting up, Masamune excitedly asks what kind of stuff she's into, only for Megumi to respond, One Piece. Masamune's face is clouded by barely disguised disappointment as he says he likes One Piece too, after all it's a super mainstream title that everyone knows about. Megumi doesn't seem to notice or care about what's just happened here, but every otaku watching felt this scene strike them through the heart, because I've had this exact conversation numerous times throughout my life. The excitement at meeting someone who you think shares your passion, only to be hit by the instant disappointment when they reveal they actually have nothing in common with you at all. And you always end up reacting exactly like Masamune in this moment. You can't exactly make a scene of like, oh no, I meant otaku, not fucking tourist lapa little bitch. You know, you would come off as the asshole in that scenario. And anyway, you know the risks involved in revealing your power level to a normie.
The images, I'm just asking if Puella, Magi, Madoka Magica would count for this category you're talking about.
If I meet somebody, if I start a new job and my coworker says this is his favorite anime, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you after work.
Yeah, we're gonna kill you, man.
So it's best to just accept it in dejected resignation. It is worth noting that in Oreimo, the popular girl had to hide her otaku interests in order to fit into the social norm, but just 5 years later in Eromanga Sensei, the popular girl is now feigning having otaku interests. The change in culture really happened that fast. You might expect that this would be the section of the video where I jump on the strange trend of analyzing and complaining about the phenomenon known as LARPers or tourists. However, in this instance, I claim we must take a Nietzschean perspective. We cannot allow ourselves to descend into ressentiment regarding these people. It is bound to make us miserable. We cannot carry this resentful attitude or we'll just become depressed. At the same time, there's no use in performing acceptance or anti-gatekeeping. In the end, that also comes from a place of ressentiment. Rather, the correct stance is to simply pay these people no mind. If you delete TikTok off your phone, I promise you will forget about this phenomenon in a week. It has no bearing on your life. You must remember that you are quite literally above it all. You are above this. This does not concern you, and you must pay it no mind. At most, it must provide you with a mild chuckle to yourself as you acknowledge what is going on, accept its irony, and move on. Even commenting on it in the manner I am presently doing is giving it too much thought, hence I will now move on. Oreimo plays on notions of deviant sexuality as a sort of marketing move, but doesn't really contain anything too taboo. Okay, I'm kind of understating it there. I might be desensitized to this stuff a little bit. But still, I think a normal person could probably enjoy Oreimo Season 1. But you cannot watch Eromanga Sensei if you can't pass displays of transgressive sexuality. The philosopher Georges Bataille claims in his book Literature and Evil, and more broadly across his entire oeuvre, that the very power of literature is its evil component. After all, you cannot write a story without evil, without an antagonist, without drama. A story without evil is incredibly boring. It is that evil, transgression, excess, eroticism, death, which makes literature dangerous. Dangerous in a good way, in the sense that it endows it with power. Great literature for Bataille, found in the works of Emily Bronte, the Marquis de Sade, Franz Kafka, Proust, is always, in this sense, complicit with evil, containing this dangerous streak. And to clarify, the notion of evil for Bataille is not plain immorality or sin. He sees evil as a pretty precise thing. It's the negation of the social order, most importantly the negation or rejection of utility, productivity, and reason in favor of what he calls sovereignty, an experience of pure, useless intensity in the present moment. He also describes this notion of the sovereign clearly in The Accursed Share. Put simply, the sovereign is the one who consumes without producing. The sovereign is evil because she transgresses social limits, the social limits which define and therefore confine the human, what it means to be or act human, to participate in humanity. And to clarify, Bataille is not against the limits themselves. Without limits, there can be no transgression. Good and evil depend upon each other. Taboos require transgression to reinforce themselves. Transgression requires taboo, or it has nothing to transgress. So sovereignty, in a sense, is a return to childhood. Before we were expected to be constantly productive, useful, and rational. Bataille believes the power of literature is precisely this childishness. It communicates the incommunicable. Sovereign experience, the moment of excess, of self-disillusion, of evil, is by definition beyond language, because language belongs to the world of utility. And yet literature gestures towards it, produces something like it in the reader, smuggles it through the rational structures of narrative and prose, and in this case voice acting, foley, music, background art, and digital animation cells. Sagiri is a perfect subject of Bataillean sovereign literature. She retains the sovereignty of childhood, she transgresses erotic taboos, and, being a hikikomori, she consumes without producing. She wastes her excess energy on useless irrational sacrifice. It is not production in the rational sense, it is pure expenditure. Drawing Bishoujo characters does not serve a rational productive purpose. She only claims she draws and live streams because it's fun, not for any rational or productive reason. This is in no way a defense of immorality. The claim is rather broader than that. It is that all societies throughout history have maintained both taboos and simultaneously zones of accepted transgression. In fact, each taboo is only maintained by the existence of a zone of its transgression. The taboo against violence requires the existence of the boxing ring to sustain itself. The taboo is important. We cannot just eliminate all taboo and allow evil total reign. As previously stated, one cannot exist without the other. This is the argument Bataille is making. It serves the same purpose as Aztec human sacrifice. It's something unavoidable in human culture, and yet it can never be accepted by a respectable rational society, because it is production beyond utility. Even here, I face the same problem which Bataille faced in his book. By staking out these positions, I am in a sense creating a paradox. I am normalizing the taboo in defending its sustained existence via transgression. I am partially recapturing the transgression into the world of good just by analyzing its social utility. And now we're suddenly back in the world of rational utility. Oh no, I've ruined the whole thing. This paradox is unavoidable while writing on this subject and cannot be resolved. And yet here I diverge from Bataille. Unlike the works he investigated in Literature and Evil, Eromanga Sensei contains no epic tragedy, no grand narrative where the sinner is punished for their sin. Perhaps, for Bataille, this would strip it of its status as sovereign, but I disagree. Eromanga Sensei serves to transgress the boundaries of the Ryaju world, but also to examine and concretize the new boundaries of the otaku world. It is a text in perfect limbo, disgustingly transgressive for one culture, straightforward and cliché for another. The otaku culture industry is a strange place, a strange world. It retains so many of the same trappings and aesthetics of rational production and capitalist exchange, and yet somehow it also, when you look more closely, actually functions on subtly different terms. Take comiket, for example. Artists spend a very long time and a lot of hard effort producing meticulously detailed masterpieces in the form of doujin, fan works. They then take these doujins and come together in a giant exhibition hall twice a year to sell them to a molten mass of hungry otaku. And yet, at the end, many, if not most of these doujin artists barely manage to break even on the production costs, especially when factoring in the opportunity cost of how much time it takes to actually create a doujin. This would clearly seem like a completely unsustainable practice through the eyes of rational economics, because that perspective is missing the point. Comiket is a mass example of something resembling a gift economy, or more broadly what Baudrillard would categorize as symbolic exchange. Now, listen closely. Just to be clear, I am not claiming that the doujin industry is strictly symbolic exchange, only that it resembles symbolic exchange. Okay. Doujins have no practical use value, or to be more precise, their function in the play of signs is not meaningfully tied to their utility. They serve a similar purpose as necklaces made from shells served in the Kula exchange. They are a sign of social prestige, a display that you are so powerful that you can afford to give away something both useless and labor-intensive. The more you give, the more power you display, the better your doujin, the higher position you take in the social hierarchy. There is, however, a notable difference here. Cooler gifts remain permanently in circulation. They are always re-gifted. It is the same in Papua New Guinean mocha. Large quantities of pigs are gifted, but they or their offspring then become a part of the quantity of the counter-gift. Doujins do not circulate like in these examples of traditional gift economies. Well, sometimes they are resold secondhand, but just let me make my point. They are taken out of circulation, effectively destroyed after they are gifted when they become part of someone's collection. In this way, they are a sort of sacrificial object. They exchange on one side where the doujin creator sacrifices their time and effort by giving away their doujin, and on the other side, the otaku engages in sovereign, useless consumption by sacrificing the doujin in taking it out of selection as it becomes one object among their collection. The literal transaction of money for the goods at the point of exchange is reduced to a sort of ritual act to appease the social code of quantification. It is only an illusion presented to the code to sneak in this symbolic exchange. No wonder they barely break even. Otaku in Japan regularly use terms such as hono, religious offerings, kenjo, presenting something to a noble, and mitsugi, to pay tribute, to describe their purchasing of otaku goods, donations to VTubers, and spending on gacha pools. This religious language is used ironically, but that doesn't prevent it from revealing a certain truth. Otaku culture really does contain a remnant of Japan's historical ritual traditions of sacrifice and symbolic exchange. Traveling to a location featured in an anime or visual novel is called a pilgrimage. A visual novel which is particularly good is known as a kamige, literally god game. Surely, Japan's kami are present at every moment of otaku culture. After all, doujins are drawn on paper. Tsukasa Fushimi's next work, after wrapping up the publishing of Eromanga Sensei, has not yet been adapted into anime, although it does have a manga adaptation. It is called Watashi no Hatsukoi wa Hazukashi Sugite Dare ni mo ienai, which roughly translates as My First Love is Too Embarrassing to Tell Anyone. I don't think it's going to get an anime adaptation, for reasons you will soon hear. I really tried to read it. I couldn't find a source for the light novel in English, but in my search I did end up summoning all 31 volumes of In Another World with my smartphone to my ThinkPad's hard drive, because why the fuck does smartphone isekai 1 have a professional translation and 2 have 31 fucking volumes? I mean, I gotta read this, right? Did you know that just after the anime ends, smartphone isekai turns into a mecha? No, you didn't know that because your IQ is simply too low to appreciate the masterpiece that is smartphone isekai, and you probably dismissed it as lazy isekai trash. But it's like the love of isekai. You would never know that as an anime only. I don't know why I'm just making fun of you. This is just rude. Why did I write this in the script? It's just uncalled for. It's also not true. A lot of that's just not true. Anyway, back to the subject at hand. I tried to read the manga of Watahazu, that's the shortened name. Watahazu. I really did. It's gone through like 5 different scanlation groups, and well, the first few are really bad. Like, no offense to the translators, I'm sure they're like English as a second language individuals. I appreciate the work that you do and so on, but some of these chapters are unreadable. Like, dialogue doesn't seem connected to itself, and I literally just can't follow what's happening. A better scanlation group did pick up the series at chapter 11, so from then on there was nothing to distract me from the frankly boring content of the manga. Watahazu contains absolutely no allusions to otaku culture. Here we can track the destruction of otaku. From Oreimo's hyper-real beginner's guide to the underground and shameful otaku culture, to Eromanga Sensei's embracing of otaku's transgressive evil, contrasted against Megumi's otaku trend-hopping, to now Watahazu's complete dismissal of otaku culture as a notable element in society. The main character of Watahazu was not an otaku. They were a handsome and relatively normal person. The whole manga, or I guess light novel, is basically a shitty clone of Onimai. I like Onimai. I read the manga, I watched the anime, it's pretty good. Watahazu is like What If Onimai, but with none of the things which make it interesting. Like, the notable part of Onimai is seeing Mahiro develop as a character from a hikikomori to a more complete human being, how the gender-swapping transformation allows her to become more like herself over time, forge new social connections, etc. The worst parts of Onimai are the moments of forced tension which have nothing to do with character interactions, specifically the moments where Mahiro's penis grows back out of nowhere and she has to hide it. Okay, well, Watahazu is basically just those scenes and nothing else. The main character is a normie, everyone is a normie, everyone's growing penises, there's the obvious hints of incest, but nothing anywhere near as bold and boundary crossing as Fushimi's previous work. If you're familiar with the concept of futanari as like an ordinary thing, as most otaku would be, then there's really nothing novel here. I have nothing philosophical to say because Watahazu has nothing to say. It focuses on gender, transformation, force femme yuri fute incest, which, like, at this point, there is no reason to read this over a straight up eromanga. At least that would resolve the eroticism. Instead we just get teases, innuendos, and nothing much of substance. I would struggle to name personality traits of the main cast. I really disliked this manga. It's possible that the original light novel is better, I do not know. Even among Fushimi's other works, which tend to be controversial, both Eromanga Sensei and Oreimo's manga adaptations have average scores in the 60% range on AniList, while Watahazu is sitting at a shockingly low 55, so it seems I am not alone in my dislike of this manga. Frankly, I am severely disappointed. Watahazu represents the death of everything I hold dear. It is a black pill I can't swallow, and yet, its existence in opposition to Onimai reveals the yin to its yang. Onimai is the true spiritual successor to the genre. We can construct a rough genealogy from Handmaid May to Rosin Maiden to NHK ni Yokoso to Oreimo to Eromanga Sensei and finally to Onimai. I am probably skipping over possible links in the chain, but don't think too hard about it, okay? It's a particular narrative which frames both the destructive and constructive nature of otaku as an inherent tension, not to be dialectically overcome, but to paradoxically sustain and drive the system and therefore the main character. Watahaze is the symbolic death of that system, an attempt to destroy what Onimai has created, but its failure demonstrates clearly that this death was declared prematurely. One could even slot Sonobisukudoro wa Koi Osuru into this list. After all, it's virtually a remake of Oreimo for a modern audience, with some of the more overt otakuisms replaced with palatable, wholesome romance. Niten Gojigen no Ririsa got an anime adaptation, and that's supposed to be the re-otakuified version of Sonobisukudoro, except the anime was insanely censored compared to the manga. The manga's pretty good though. Nonetheless, the manga does exist. Onimai's anime is notable for in fact having a much stronger eroticism than its source manga. This is a conspicuous display of erotic power by the anime's creators, and one which I respect. Don't read me too drastically here, okay? I'm not declaring the death of otaku culture or anything so fatalistic. I am in fact announcing a triumph. It has survived another of many failed assassination attempts. Or maybe Tsukasa Fushimi is just washed. If you appreciated this schizo post, you may be interested in joining my Patreon, where I have recently posted an exclusive video in which I tear apart some random video essayist in long form for their shit reading of Baudrillard. I also post podcasts there from time to time, so if you like the sound of my voice, that might interest you. Feel free to subscribe to this YouTube channel and check out my other videos if you enjoyed this one. Goodbye.